We are fixing 3,011 homes that were devastated by the explosion.
What do we need to put in place so that we're better prepared next time?
My name is Matthew Hawley, and I am a Trump supporter.
Welcome to Your World by Bloomberg QuickTake. I'm Jennifer in New York.
And I'm Kurumi in Tokyo. The August 4th explosion in Beirut claimed nearly 200 lives, injured thousands, and left neighborhoods across Lebanon's capital devastated.
The blast also left thousands homeless, and one charity is stepping in to help Beirut's residents restore their homes.
They lost their roof, they lost their home, they lost their family, they lost everything they had. We are fixing 3,011 homes that were devastated by the explosion. So you can see the ceiling is very simply cracked open, and we have to fix this immediately. The first rain is usually around the second week of September, so we're running against time. Beit al-Baraka is a Lebanon-based charity, and what we do is we take care of all sorts of families that are in need of support, basically for food, for shelter, and for medical. And now, following the 4 August explosion, something changed in the rehabilitation of homes department. So we inaugurated a new department now. We have volunteer engineers and architects, and with them we have 12 teams of contractors, because we are fixing 3,011 homes that were devastated by the explosion, and 200 small shops. Our network provides jobs for points. Every person who works with us today gets to have points. And with these points, we can help people get more food, more medication if they need it. Maybe they would like to buy a couch. So they get the chance to work, to get more points. And with these points, they can ask us for anything they need. If you want, it helps to keep a certain economy alive, although it's an economy of barter. But still, it doesn't let people become too dependent on charity. Following the explosion, what has changed is that, first of all, the needs have changed. We're talking about a disappearing middle class who has money, but unfortunately their money is stuck in the bank. So they have money, but they don't have access to this money. So we need to help them now, immediately before the rain starts, because they need to close their windows and their doors. When you go into these people's homes, the first thing that gets to you is how unfair this is. And so when you talk to them, they are still under shock. Don't forget that they're sleeping in roofless homes. They don't have beds. They're sleeping on the floor. When you talk to them, these people speak 3 languages, and they're very well educated. These are the intellectual elite of Lebanon who live in this part of Beirut. I mean, you talk to them, and then you have this doctor who tells you, I've been sleeping on the ground, on the floor with my wife, because we're still waiting, hoping to get a bed. And then you look across the street and you find this little old lady sitting in her house, and she has no windows, no ceiling, no door, and she's just waiting for someone to come and help her. And there has been absolutely no decision taken from the government to do anything with regards to these homes. Absolutely nothing. So where are they today? Why aren't they doing anything? Yes, we are going to seek intervention. Yes, we are going to seek international intervention. President Macron came to Lebanon twice. The first time he came was immediately after the explosion. He asked to meet the charities because he understood that the charities are doing all the work and the government is absolutely unreliable. We could see from his immediate response now that he did answer everything we asked for on the second day of the bomb. The budget needed today to rebuild Lebanon, to get students back to school, to get hospitals rebuilt and homes rebuilt, can never be covered by individuals. This has to be funding that comes from other governments. Lack of vision and lack of planning that has led all these NGOs to play the part, somewhere along the line, to play the part of the government. What all of this has taught me is that the good thing always ends up happening. No matter what you do, things go back to the way they should be, and justice always prevails.
COVID-19 isn't the first global pandemic, and it likely won't be the last. A new challenge from Trinity College Cambridge aims to use a $12.8 million prize to foster insight and innovation to create solutions for the next big health crisis.
What do we need to learn now? What do we need to put in place so that we're better prepared next time? There will be a next time. The Trinity Challenge is about using data and analytics so we're better prepared next time. And we're particularly interested in three areas: threats, response and recovery. Governments and public health agencies are faced with the here and now, which is very complex. We're learning all the time. Every day a new study, every day a new insight. But what we really need to do alongside that, and they don't seem to have the space, is think, what do we need to learn now? What do we need to put in place so that we're better prepared next time? There will be a next time. If you look at this century, we've had some nasty outbreak or pandemic every 5 years. As we move forward, some of the learning will feed back into COVID response. But this is very forward-looking about building a coalition that's working together. Well, I'm really interested in sewage. What if we had some way of knowing that there was a signal of a threat? I'd prefer to have 9 signals that turned out not to be important and find the one that was. And sewage may well be the way forward.
Elections are just as much about voters as they are about the candidates running. For 2020, Bloomberg News identified 9 new demographics primed to influence the U.S. presidential race. This week, we're looking at one group defying expectations and conventional wisdom. Meet the minority mold breaker.
My name is Matthew Hawley, and I am a Trump supporter. They think because I'm black that I have to vote Democrat. They think that they can come out and say, racism bad, you guys went through a whole bunch of stuff and I'm here to save you, vote for me. They've been doing that for years now, but they never change anything. This election right here will be the first time I actually cast a ballot for a president. When I first seen Trump, he was standing at the podium and he addressed black people directly. And he told us, you guys have been voting for Democrats forever now.
You're living in poverty, your schools are no good, you have no jobs, 58% of your youth is unemployed.
From voting for Democrats all these years, and then he looked in the camera and he said, what do you have to lose? I said, I like that. I'm from Rialto, California. I grew up basically an orphan with no mother, no father, or any other blood relatives. I lived my life on the street, and I raised myself, and I'm still raising myself, to tell you the truth. When it comes to the Black Lives Matter as an organization and political type of thing, I 100% reject them. They haven't given anything to the Black communities. I haven't seen the Black Lives Matter organization come down to my community and repave one street. I let them tell it. I'm an Uncle Tom, a sellout. They try to convince me that Trump is a racist, and I ask them to, well, give me proof. Their whole proof is he's a racist.
So if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
That's not gonna win me over right here, because when they ask me for proof on how he's not a racist, I give them proof. When it comes to the prison reform, when it comes to the Black unemployment, it's like, if he is a racist, he is the worst racist there is. Do your own research. Don't believe everything CNN says. Don't believe everything I say. Don't believe everything Fox says. Speaking to whether Donald Trump is keeping all of his promises, the wall's going up, America is first, jobs came back. Man, I love you, Mr. Trump, and I know you don't mean any ill intent towards us.
If we ignore that science and sort of put our head in the sand and think it's all about vegetation management, we're not going to succeed together protecting Californians.
Okay, it'll start getting cooler. You just watch.
I wish science agreed with you.
Well, I don't think science knows, actually.
The effects of climate change has become yet another thing that President Trump and Democratic nominee Biden disagree on. But after weeks of natural disasters across the U.S., we called up a climate scientist to ask him what the science is telling us about what's behind it all. It seems like year after year, the fire season is getting worse and worse. How did we get here to this point that we're at right now?
In California, over the past few decades, fire seasons have become progressively worse, both in terms of the number of acres burned, the number of very large fires, and the harm that those fires are causing to humans and to the environment. So we have recent record warmth, a dry winter preceding it, and then of course in the long run we have the long-term warming trend. So we have climate change and the influence that's having, drawing out the vegetation and making it easier, setting the stage for these extreme fire weather conditions to occur when we get a heat wave or a wind event or a thunderstorm.
What does your research tell you about why things are getting so worse over the past few years?
The global warming that's already occurred has already doubled the occurrence of extreme fire weather conditions in California, like we're seeing right now in the autumn. There is already a pretty strong human fingerprint on the increasing propensity for fires to become very large and burn very intensely. That doesn't necessarily tell us anything about how the fires started, but it tells us what happens once these fires begin. Now, there are other factors that are important, and there is a kernel of truth that the historical legacy of total fire suppression policies in the forests in the American West have by themselves increased the current fire risk in places that have dense forests today, because we excluded the beneficial and the natural low to medium intensity fires for so long that a lot of these forests have outgrown and become somewhat unhealthy with vegetation that is more dense than it would naturally be, presenting more opportunities for the fuel to burn. But acting on top of that still is climate change. The fire suppression policy in forests is only relevant in and near forests, and many of the fires that are currently burning in other types of vegetation, brush, grass, and oak woodlands, things like that, there the larger influence really would be climate change and increasing urban incursion into high-risk zones. So it's really these confluence of three factors: the increasing propensity for people to live in harm's way, in some places the legacy of total fire suppression policies in the forest during the 20th century, but even more pervasively, and on top of that, is the growing effect of climate change, which is making fires more intense.
What can people do on an everyday basis to break this current cycle that we're on, or do something to contribute to hopefully this turning around?
It's challenging because it is difficult, I think, as an individual to really get a grasp of the enormity of what's going on and the kinds of solutions that might really help deeply address the problem. There are several different distinct problems, I think. One is the wildfire problem, which is itself sort of composed of these three different elements that I keep mentioning. We can still choose to eventually stop global warming by bringing our collective carbon emissions down to around net zero. Having conversations with your friends and families and neighbors about the importance of getting there and what it means to you, pressing policymakers, allowing these sorts of issues to influence who you vote for. It is difficult for individual actions by themselves to scale up to the kind of solutions that we need to solve this problem. On the wildfire front, how we build our homes and where we build our homes can very much influence their likelihood of surviving a wildfire. The building materials that we use and the kind of defensible space that you have around your home, for example, can greatly affect outcomes when it comes to wildfire. Fire at a lower to moderate intensity that is burning not near populated areas or not threatening lives may actually play a really powerful role in solving the problem. It's one of the reasons why the problem is so bad right now, because we excluded all of those low to moderate intensity fires in the forest over the 20th century. These destructive megafires are not inevitable. We can choose what kind of fire we want to have on the landscape, and I think if we choose wisely, we may be able to avoid some of these fire catastrophes that we're seeing. It's going to be a lot cheaper and a lot less miserable for a lot of people in the long run if we deal with this upfront proactively, rather than trying to respond to and recover from these ever-increasing disasters.
Hae Kim left North Korea with no job and no family in search of her dream. Now she runs a matchmaking business pairing North Korean refugees with South Korean bachelors.
제가 지금 자군 통일을 이어간다고 생각을 해요. 저는 2012년도에 한국 남한으로 온 김혜린입니다. 북한의 고향은 양강도 회산이라고 백두산 근처예요. 되게 날씨가 추운 고장이죠. 가족이 없이 혼자 한국에 오게 됐어요. 다 부모님은 다 북한에 있다 보니까 가족에 대한 그리움이 너무 많았었어요, 제가. 그러다 보니까 가족을 이렇게 이어주는 그런 일을 한번 해보고 싶었어요. 또 북한에서부터 좀 중매쟁이를 좀 많이 했었어요, 어릴 때부터. 한국에 와서는 첫 번째는 가족을 좀 만들어주고 싶은 그런 마음에 시작을 하게 됐던 것 같아요. 제가 너무 외로웠었거든요.
이 사회에 깊이 들어온 것 같은 북한에서 오신 분들은 진짜 많이 피타는 노력이에요. 이게 여기 적응하려고 하는 그 노력이란 건
보람 있는 그 순간들은 정말 저희한테 너무 잘 만나고 있어요. 너무 감사합니다. 이런 얘기를 하고 그분들이 정말 결혼식장에 손 좀 맞잡고 들어가잖아요. 그때 너무 행복하고 너무 감사하죠. 제가 그 전에 처음 일을 시작했을 때 정말 먹고 살기 힘들어서 온 분들이 되게 많았었어요. 근데 지금은 꿈을 찾아서 한국에 온다. 이런 얘기를 되게 많이 해요. 난 자유를 찾아서 왔어요. 이런 얘기를 되게 많이 했던 것 같아요. 김정은 이게 정권이 들어가면서 너무 이게 심해지다 보니까 더 많은 분들이 탈북을 해서 자유를 찾아서 오는 거죠. 북한은 너무 제재가 됐잖아요. 머리도 길면 안 되고. 근데 한국에는 그런 거를 다 할 수 있는 세상이잖아요. 내가 예쁘게 꾸미고 싶으면 꾸미고 내가 하고 싶은 이야기도 김정은이 나쁘면 나쁘다 얘기를 할 수 있는 세상이잖아요. 그러니까 편견이 좀 있었어요. 인식의 북한 여성 결혼에 대해서 인식이 많이 좋아졌어요. 불과 한 3, 4년 전보다도. 북한에서 태어난 거 빼고는 정말 다른 게 없거든요. 왜냐하면 같은 민족이고 같은 언어를 쓰고 똑같은 한 사람인데 통일이 언젠간 되지 않을까요? 제가 지금 작은 통일을 이어간다고 생각을 해요. 지금 서로가 모르는 북한 여성과 남한 남성을 지금 이어주는 일을 하니까.
That's our show for this week. Thanks for watching. And remember to follow Bloomberg QuickTake on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
And for a daily recap of the day's top stories, visit quicktake.video. Thanks for watching.